Hello and good morning. Happy Thanksgiving Day to everyone out there watching here in Canada. My name is Marc Caron, and you're listening to Conscious Living Radio, which normally airs every Wednesday at 6 p.m. here in Vancouver on 100.5 FM CFRO in Vancouver. And with the lockdown still kind of in place, the studio hasn't opened, so we're still pre-recording and airing on Facebook Live. If you're watching today, that's where you're seeing us, wherever you're watching in the world. Thank you for tuning in. And we'll be posting later on our page in Spirit Plant Medicine, because it's that time of year where our Spirit Plant Medicine conference is just around the corner. And I'm here with my good friend, I'd like to think now, and Associate Stephen Gray, to speak to another one of our fabulous presenters about what's going on in the world of psychedelic plant medicines and for healing and transformation. So, Stephen, as always, it's a pleasure. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Marc, and honored, actually, quite honestly, to introduce Dr. Pamela or Pam Kryskow. Dr. Kryskow is a clinical instructor in the Department of Medicine at the University of British Columbia. Specializing in alleviating the complex modality of pain, she successfully synthesizes her training in family, rural, emergency, pain, counseling, and functional medicine. Her wealth of experience is in conventional medicine, augmented by her deep knowledge on the safe use of MDMA, psilocybin, and other psychedelics, places her at the forefront of this new, rapidly emerging paradigm. Her specialized interest and research in the applicability of microdosing has proven formulative in this growing practice. So, welcome, Pam.
Thank you. It's always interesting hearing one's bio read. A good friend of mine wrote that for me, so it always is a little odd hearing yourself described.
Yeah, no kidding. If we had more time, I'd tell you a story about a musician who was being introduced at a college concert, and he sat up in the balcony and didn't want to come down because the guy was doing such a wonderful job of praising him. Anyway, so let's get right into it, Pam. Perhaps a starting point, if you will, would be, could you tell the viewers and listeners of this show what motivated and influenced you toward becoming involved with this work with psychedelics and pathogens and the like?
Wow, that's a big question.
Take as much as you want of it.
Well, actually, it's kind of interesting because my first degree was criminology. So I was at SFU in criminology, and we covered this, pretty in depth. Dr. Neil Boyd is a phenomenal instructor and prolific writer. And this was part of our learning there, was about the criminalization of drugs and how, especially in Canada, mostly it was around racism and political control. And so this was just part of our course material. So it was just, we had, you think about it, you come out of high school with the war on drugs and DARE and all that stuff, and you come out with this one sense of what drugs are all about, and then you go into a degree program, criminology, and learn something totally different. So that was kind of the first place that I learned about that. And then I just kind of put it on the shelf. And then, many years later, got my medical degree and went through medicine, and as a practicing medicine, it was really hard to ignore some of the publications that were coming, especially out of Johns Hopkins, around psychedelics and end-of-life stress. And it's one of these things that I think it's many little parts, many little pieces of the puzzles keep coming together at a point. And then as I transitioned into treating more and more chronic pain. And half of an element of chronic pain is the physical pain, and then the other half is the emotional pain. And I just kept thinking and kept seeing more research and more thoughtful articles around psychedelic medicine. And I could see how so many of my patients would do so well if they could have a medication and a caring clinician to help them get through some of these stuck points that are clearly contributing to their emotional distress, their physical pain, and it steamrolled from that. You just keep reading the research, you keep reading articles, and it just becomes a no-brainer. And then when you marry that together with my criminology degree, knowing that these medicines were legitimate medicines, historically from indigenous populations used, we were using them in medicine in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Then they were criminalized for no scientific reason whatsoever. And then, of course, now seeing it. So that's really where that interest came from, and it just continues to move forward. And I think we're seeing in medicine so much thoughtful dialogue. We're seeing incredible research all across North America. If you go on Gov Trials right now, there's probably close to 50 registered psychedelic trials in North America alone. So the interest is increasing, and I think people are waking up to these are legitimate medicines. We have a huge population that could use them. You know, people want to feel better. They don't want to be depressed. They don't want to be anxious. They want to be happy. They want to be engaged. They don't want to be in chronic physical pain. Like, nobody wants to really be on chronic drugs for anything. And so we have a really unique opportunity to do this really thoughtfully and bring these medicines back into the use for the benefit of our patients.
I have a question on that. So in your experience, your research and the data and everything you've seen from the medical side and the medical research side of things, have you noticed if there's any one particular medicine that stands out as being most effective for what you're speaking about in terms of depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and things?
I mean, I would only be speaking, you know, case report anecdotally and from the research that we've seen so far. And so I want to preface it by saying, I think we need a lot more research. I think in an ideal world, what I would love to see is that we would know better that, oh, is psilocybin better for X, and is LSD better for X, and MDMA? You know, from my colleagues, we probably argue that, you know, if you really needed to get into the relational stuff, you know, the trauma, marriage counseling, couples counseling, etc., you know, MDMA is probably the leader on that. MDMA, it has fantastic results around PTSD, as you all know, with the MAPS MDMA for PTSD trials. Psilocybin certainly has a place in, you know, end of life distress with the Theracell project that's happened in Canada, and there's a huge right to try movement in the United States as well. And I know at least, I'm thinking 2 and probably 3 different groups of palliative care physicians working on protocols for end of life and psilocybin. So, I mean, I think they're all very promising. People that know a lot more about this, that have followed drug policy for longer, like for instance, like Marc from MAPS, he believes that LSD was probably the most promising based on the research that was done prior to criminalization. There was vast amounts of research being done on LSD. And from conversations with people like Rick Doblin and at MAPS USA, you know, the propaganda around LSD was so strong, you know, and so embedded that you know, I think a lot of researchers, including like, you know, Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins, felt that, you know, it might be just smarter to use medicines that didn't really have that negative connotation and propaganda in the media. So stuff like psilocybin, you know, sounds more just like a medicine, and MDMA, you know, didn't have necessarily as much baggage as LSD. So, I mean, to go back to your question, what is the one that's best, or what should we be looking at? I'd like to look at them all, actually. I think we're at a time where we should really be pouring money into solid clinical trials, and let's find out what is, and I don't think it's one fits all. So, but if you're this person with this issue of this type of depression, what might be the best medication, and at what doses? Is low dose better for you, or is one high dose better for you? And if you're, you know, if you're an athlete and you're looking to optimize, maybe it's this dose of psilocybin or this dose of whatever, you know. And if you have, you know, if you have to do a marathon session at work, maybe microdosing this is better. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm very curious, and I definitely want to lean in on the research. And I think there is a large group of physicians and medical researchers that actually are very curious about these questions too.
That's great.
Great, yeah.
Well, I know that we're heading in this conversation, I think, toward your microdosing project. But before we get there, maybe I'd like to lead you on a slight tangent, not totally, but there's three other medicines I'm wondering if you have any familiarity with and an opinion about in regard to these issues or these potential, benefits. One would be cannabis. Another one, which you haven't referenced here so far, but is quite getting a lot of attention for a number of potential medical benefits, etc. Another one is coming into the underground therapeutic world. I'm hearing is 3-MMC. And a third one, which is also getting a lot of attention these days, is ketamine. I wonder if you have any thoughts on any of those three.
Yeah, I do. Maybe not super, probably not the best person to talk about them, but with cannabis, we were, as a doc, we were starting to learn a lot about it as it became medicalized. There's a lot of teaching, what is the best for what research do we have, what research do we not have yet? And then it was legalized in Canada. So it kind of just went, oh, well, okay, people can we'll do it their own way now. But my, a lovely person that I really like, a friend, Dr. Julia Holland, wrote a beautiful book. I believe it's called Good Chemistry. She just published it. And the first part, yeah. So
yeah.
her book.
Excuse me to interrupt, but by the way, she's going to do a little 5 to 10 minute message at the conference.
Excellent. Well, she's brilliant, and I just adore her. But I had a number of my patients who actually alcohol was their crutch. Read the first chapter of her book on her first part on cannabis, and the change in their life has been remarkable. They've switched over from alcohol to cannabis. They've reduced their consumption of alcohol to almost nothing. And some of the issues, everybody uses these for a reason. And if you can help deal with the reason, then you need less substances, right? If you get a better sleep, you need less coffee. If you're happier, you're not medicating your sorrow. So anyways, they're using cannabis a lot more just to feel more relaxed, take away their anxiety and help their insomnia. So I'm not the best person to speak on it. She's far more intelligent on that, and I have a lot more medical colleagues that could speak better. But I think for the right reason, it's a great use. It's a great substance, and let's just use it for the right reason. And if people are using it for the wrong reason, I don't think we need to take it away, but let's help get rid of the reason why they're using it, right?
Yes.
So
escapism.
So they feel healthier. That's all.
Yeah.
Every substance is used for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to take that away from anyone. And then 3-MMC, I really can't speak too much on that other than anecdotally. I know a number of therapists are using it for relational work, and they're finding it very useful. A friend of mine is a PhD psychologist, and she just says it does wonders for her marriage counseling and her couples counseling. People can open up, they can talk openly, and they can really go into the places that they need to. And she feels that it really is relationship saving in a lot of instances. So again, I'm just speaking anecdotally about these. This is not my personal experience because I don't work with 3-MMC.
I know I had a personal experience with 3-MMC, and I've met a number of practitioners who have been using it, and like what you're saying, Pam, very good for relational things. They're using it for somatic therapy as well, and it has this ability to remove blame and shame, and creates, like you were talking about, this openness to just talk about everything and anything. And it's amazing what will come up for people in using it. So it's an interesting medicine that I personally want to learn a little bit more about. And, that's part of the research I'm doing. So thanks for asking that question, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need these sort of things, right? So many of these medicines you hear about. I've been counseling for like 5 years, and I was never able to get as deep as I did in that one session on fill in the blank substance.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you're a doctor or a therapist, your ears should be perking up for that. What?
Absolutely.
As a doctor, I don't want my patients to need me for life. I want them to be better and off. Like I say that to every single one of my chronic pain patients. My job is to make it so you do not need me anymore. And that should be our philosophy. And if there's things that can do it faster and better and with more ease, then I mean, it's ridiculous. It's unethical not to be looking further into these, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
And then
ketamine
you
is
asked about ketamine.
yeah.
Ketamine is I really like the medicine ketamine. It's been with us for a long time. It's been in use since the 60s. We send our combat troops often with ketamine, you know, to self-administer in the case of a trauma or, you know, an injury. It's on the WHO's list of essential medications. It's a fantastic medication. As when I work in rural emerge, it's one of my go-tos for pain control, for trauma. It's so safe, and it's got a huge therapeutic use. I have two friends, colleagues that are using it, also in couples counseling at low doses, around 50 milligrams to 75 milligrams, which again is similar to what we said earlier about 3-MMC, allows people just to open up and discuss and go places they haven't been able to go. And so some tremendous work around there. I'm hoping that they'll publish on their data soon. It's again, you know, we just all want to connect and have good relationships. So anything that helps with that. And then of course, ketamine for the deeper work, PTSD, you know, using the higher dissociative doses has, you know, lots of research around it, more emerging research. Our colleagues in the US, especially in California, have been using it for 2 decades quite well in the community. Community therapists use it. You know, an MD will prescribe, but then the clinical psychologist or the therapist will be doing the sessions with the patient in their office, and obviously a little bit different now with COVID. And you know, it just, again, it has so much potential use for therapeutic work. You know, people can get in to places they haven't been able to see from a higher vision of it, you know, look in. And it's one of these things that if somebody hasn't actually worked with ketamine or ever been on ketamine, it's kind of hard to describe. But it, you know, there's lots of emerging data around depression, OCD, around PTSD. I'm blanking a little bit on anxiety, some bipolar. And we really should be using this as a tool.
You're taking
and the and sorry to cut you off, but what I'm finding too is the psychiatry residents are a lot more schooled on this than are the psychiatrists, you know, and the psychiatry residents are really going, why are we not learning about this? Why is this not taught? These are clearly efficient and useful medications. And if people can get somewhere and get the realizations in you know, a 1 to 4 hour session that would normally take them 2 to 3 years, then why are we not using it?
Yes. I just wanted to follow up on the ketamine issue a little bit with you. You're taking what I would say a larger view of, you know where we can be going with all these things and the benefits. In the sort of more what would you call it, logistical progress of that particular medicine, there have been concerns, and there's an organization you may be aware of now called KAP or CAPBC that's trying to deal with this issue. And one of our presenters last year, you might have seen him, Jamie Wheel, spoke about somewhere, if not at the conference, about how because ketamine's sort of in this unique position, right? Because it's legal for the correctly, appropriately certified practitioners or professionals to administer, and so there's some concern that there was given an example of a doctor was charging in the States, was charging a big amount of money, no training whatsoever in that kind of work, like working with, medicines or psychoactive medicines that way, no background, in ceremonial or therapeutic work in that context. and then just bringing people in for these 1 hour sessions, charging them big bucks, and then sending them home. So this CAP BC organization, I believe, is trying to educate people and help steward this work in a good way. I don't know if you're aware of any of that kind of work, or have any concerns about the over control of the medical profession of that medicine.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of questions in that, but I mean, I think one thing I would do first is separate Canada from the U.S. I mean, Canada is a little bit different, and we approach things a little bit differently too. So yeah, right now it's an interesting time because there's a lot of good evidence around how to work with ketamine in a really good way, and that I think most people that are trained in ketamine agree. I'm sure there's people that don't, but that the medication coupled with good psychotherapy is the biggest benefit. Not just, so what you're seeing a lot in the US is IV ketamine clinics. So people come in, they sit in a nice chair, nice environment, they get an IV of ketamine, and then they go home. They go home in an Uber. And there's no therapy involved with that. Now that there's evidence there for depression, for managing depression. So that's certainly helpful. But then, like I said, people that are trained in using ketamine in a therapeutic, with a therapeutic modality, get much better results. And again, we need larger studies on this. You know, maybe there's the subset of people that just IV ketamine is the way to go. They'll do great with that. And then there's a subset that they should be working with a therapist. Let's find out, right? Those are options. And then, you know, also IV ketamine is used for chronic pain in Vancouver. You know, it's a long wait list. It's like 2 years, I believe, for St. Paul's Hospital or Vancouver General to get into the IV ketamine program for chronic pain. And I've had patients in that program and they do phenomenal. I get the first 3 weeks after, I'm pretty much pain free. And then it starts to creep in the final week of the month. And then I get my IV again. So you can see that'd be life changing to not have to be on pain medications, you know, for 3 weeks of every month when you used to be on pain medications. So, I mean, that's another way, but I agree. I think that, I think we need to do this thoughtfully. You know, I think I really personally, I'm trained in ketamine assisted therapy, ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And I fully believe that, you know, you do need set and setting. You need to set people up. You need to get them ready. You need to help them integrate. And then you need to give the medicine in a safe way. And it can safely be given in the community. Like I said, our colleagues in California have been doing this for 2 decades in clinical therapy settings, very safely. And then you need the follow-up, right? You want to help people integrate what they learned and then make it part of who they are.
Excellent.
So,
yeah.
Again, so they don't need you eventually. So I don't know if that completely answers all the things that were in your question, but you know, I think it's a very good medicine. It is legal. It is psychedelic-like. It allows people to look at their problems from a different point of view. Just by administering it, you do lower depression, which is phenomenal on its own. And then you couple it with good therapy, and you're going to get a better clinical outcome. And it's not for everybody too. I mean, again, that goes back to let's find out who it is a good medicine for, and let's find out who it's not a good medicine for.
Well, one thing I've
be good.
Yeah, I find it interesting to see how many different applications, how many different things it can be used for, you know, in the different ways it can be used. So I look forward to see what comes out of that.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's a lot of physicians in BC that are trained in British Columbia, where we are right now, that are trained in ketamine, and a lot of thoughtful therapists that have trained. You know, they've gone through CREA, which is an institute in the U.S. Our Phil Wolfson's training. He's trained thousands of therapists. Arenda has trained, you know, probably 80 therapists. There's a lot of well-trained therapists in British Columbia, a lot in Ontario, and many spattered throughout. And it's a good one to scaffolding off. And I like using that term because when it has psychedelic-like properties, we can build our skill sets on using it. Our psychiatrists, our psychiatric residents, you know, can get comfortable with it. Our clinical therapists, our psychologists, our MDs, and the majority of mental health is handled by family doctors. So I mean, they can be very skilled at this. especially in rural areas and places where who would never get a psychiatrist working there.
That's
Not
encouraging.
because it's a bad place, just because of the population.
Yeah.
And then as we get really good at using a medication like ketamine that is legal, then it certainly makes sense in the future as these other medicines come into being legalized, that you would then use, maybe instead of ketamine you might go, actually I think psilocybin is a better choice for this patient, or perhaps LSD is a better, or 3-MMC or 2CB or whatever. There's all these other molecules that I am definitely not an expert on.
Well, you spoke earlier about the different dosage possibilities, right? Everything from what I think is called a psycholytic level of dosage up to the true psychedelic or mind expanding, ego dissolving kinds of doses of some of these medicines, like the work that they've done at Johns Hopkins, with end of life people, or high dose psilocybin, I believe, that kind of thing. But, however, not but exactly, however, you are going to be speaking at the conference about microdosing, and if I'm not mistaken, particularly with psilocybin, and there's this remarkable project going. Can you give us the who's, where's, what, when's, why's, and everything about all that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll give you a bit of the background of it. So, microdosing psychedelics has been going on for quite a while, probably back to the 50s. And then it really kind of started speeding up, and not speeding up, but becoming more widely known with some published articles, and then Silicon Valley spreading through there. And then certainly Dr. Jim Fadiman and his colleague, Sophia Korb, and a number of people, other researchers out of the Netherlands and Switzerland and Amsterdam. But what got me interested first even about microdosing is I had, in very short order, 2 patients who had a history of being quite suicidal disclose to me that they had been suicidal, and they had started microdosing, and in a very short time, within like 5 days, it just disappeared. Their mood changed. And when somebody says that to me, I mean, I'm very interested. I mean, I might just store it in my memory banks, but 2 in a row, kind of, I thought, this needs to be listened to. So I started looking into it, started doing a little bit of research, looking into the science. And most of what was being documented, mostly from observations. So Dr. Fadiman and Dr. Korb were bringing in a lot of, people were self-reporting how they were feeling. And a lot of that was around, maybe they're happier, maybe more creative. And I thought, well, that's all well and fine, but I'm also hearing other stories of clinical improvements, like eyesight improving and hearing improving. And I was like, as an MD, that's what I'm really interested in, right? I can grant that people feel more creative and have a better mood, and maybe they're more alert, et cetera, and they can code better as a coder in Silicon Valley. And that's all fine. But what if there are other medical benefits about it this time? And as you know, Paul Stamitz had a number of case studies around this, that of people that had told him about, that their hearing greatly improved, or they could just like see something, like just their vision was so acute. And at the same time, it happened that I met 2 of the 2 owners of Quantified Citizen, an app development and health app. They had already had some work in that. So Ismail and Kaylin, and it kind of just all came together. I said, what if we could get the data, like get a lot of data, ask a lot of people, all the specifics, then, then we would know where to do the clinical trials, right? Clinical trials are expensive, really, really expensive. So it's good to do something where you kind of have a good theory already and see if it's true or not. Then you get to test your theory. So the team came together quite quickly, along with Dr. Zach Walsh at UBC as our principal investigator. And what we did is we found all the measurements that are considered validated. So what we mean when something is validated is that that when you do that questionnaire or that survey, the results are real, because many studies have used the same tool to measure it. So what we did is we found a whole bunch of these, everything that we could put in the app. So one depression scale that had been used in other clinical trials, anxiety, memory tests. So we worked with some colleagues out east that were neurologists and got some measurements from them. And then also visual, how your vision, how good is your vision and how good is your hearing. And so we put all those in the app, and we were lucky to be able to promote it quite widely and got a lot of people.
So can I interrupt for a second?
Into it.
About the details of this, the app, is it recording, measuring, and playing back to you or showing you longitudinal results? In other words, like if you take the test, on day one and then you take it, 3 months later, does it indicate that there have been changes?
Well, that's some of the glitches of the app are that we got too much data.
You what?
And we got too much. So we got so many
Oh,
people that joined the study
yeah.
that now we have to use AI to comb through it, right? Like, like most clinical trials are, maybe 100 people. Well, we got 10,000 people that signed up. Like,
Well,
so
that's
you can imagine.
certainly a sign of success that people are interested in the work that's happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're in right now is we're in data crunching. We're trying to extract that data in a meaningful way and see where the trends are. And that's what we're going to be presenting over time, over the next months and years. It's pulling out that data and then saying we need to study this now. So, I'll save some of that for the conference. Obviously, you don't want me to tell all the juicy
No.
bits yet, but yeah, we're getting good results, and it's validating what's gone on before. But clearly, stories are great. That's where we're all observational scientists, right? We're all observing life and looking at what we're seeing. And so that's kind of what we've done here. So we've built on what other researchers have done. We've taken it to a new level and added new things. And now what we can do is then take those findings that are positive from the microdosing study and then do clinical trials on it. Because there are problems when you ask people to self-report, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm
and we
wondering. Oh,
recognize
sorry.
that. No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was going to ask, for the user, the lay person, as it were, and I'm speaking somewhat personally here because I'm finding it a little bit confusing to decide or figure out, specifically how to make use of psilocybin microdose capsules and so on, because there are a number of companies and individuals putting these together. In fact, there seem to be quite a few, and everyone's doing it differently. And there's all this, potentially conflicting information about like dosage, which, when I first started hearing about psilocybin microdosing, there was one local group here in Vancouver that was offering two different dosages in a capsule, either was 0.15 grams or 0.25. And then, for example, I heard somebody say at a conference that she was taking theirs, the 0.15, and taking a quarter of that. And I've taken that particular company's or person's 1.15 and found it to be, I would say, beyond threshold dosage. And I can't imagine that, considering the 0.25 as a microdose. And then, you have people like there's a woman in Vancouver now that's making her own and selling them and so on. And she's putting in like what is it? Point one, not point one, 1/10 of one, 1/100th of, no, 10 out of 1,000, whatever that is. Sorry, I can't figure it out. 0.15 is 150
Yeah.
milligrams, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about 0.10 or something like that. Like, and then the other issue with that is what are people mixing with it? There's the Stamitz formula, which originally, and I don't know if it still is, lion's mane and niacin. Paul talked about that in our interview the other day, and how the niacin is kind of potentiates things, etc. But people are, mixing guarana for a little bit of a caffeinated thing in it. Some people are mixing CBD and THC into these things. I just wonder if you can help, poor schmucks in the big world like me figure this out. Like
Well,
dosage, frequency,
I
mix, and all these
can't
things.
really make, I can't make it recommendations. I mean, number one, it's still illegal,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
You know,
Okay.
so I mean, as a medical doctor, I have to stay within what's legal. However, what we're doing with this is that's what we're observing. We're not telling people what to do. We're
Right.
observing what people are doing. And then because people are already microdosing different substances, like whether it's psilocybin, LSD, iboga, chocolate, I mean, whatever. We're just observing what they're doing. And because we have so many people, hopefully what we'll be able to do is then pull out trends.
Mm-hmm.
So we may find at this substance, X substance at X dose seems to work better for people that have this type of depression, right? We might find that, or we might find that, oh, look at this, people that are doing this dose at this frequency of this substance seem to have improved their reaction time quite considerably. This might be a good clinical trial for Alzheimer's patients or early dementia patients. So the questions that you're asking are good, but anyone who purports to have the answer to that doesn't. They don't know that, right? We
So
just don't have those answers.
We're really in the early stages of all that then.
We're totally in the early stages,
Okay.
and that's fine. Like, because also consider this: what is, you know, all these things that are being sold in the underground right now? Are they this? What strain are they? You know, you know, are they the same strain? Are they? There is huge just in psilocybin mushrooms. There's huge variability in how much psilocybin is in psilocybin mushrooms from one batch to the other.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
from
and
one person who grows.
one strain to the other, right? And you know,
and where
some
it's
are more
grown and
colorful.
what it's grown on. Is it wild? Was it wild collected? Was it cultivated? You know, so all these questions, who knows? Like, I mean, I think people could find variability even within the same person's stuff that they're getting, or if you're picking it, you know, in the wild, you might find. So I mean, that's kind of where this citizen science is very helpful, because you get to, in a clinical trial, you don't often get, unless you have a lot of money and you're a pharmaceutical company that can really put in a lot of money, you're not going to be able to run 1,000 people through a clinical trial to find out. But what we can do with this kind of big data using Quantified Citizens app, we can look at a whole bunch of people, and we can take the criticisms on the chin. That's not a problem. We can, like, we know all the negative, like all the reasons why the science isn't super robust, but it does give us the trends. We do get to see, is LSD seeming to be better over here? Is psilocybin better for these things? And at what doses and at what regimes? And then hopefully in the clinical trials, what we can do is we get standardized psilocybin or standardized psilocybe mushrooms. And then we get to test the hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right. And the reality in microdosing right now, sorry, Marc, is that probably what's happening is we're getting skewed people too. Like, this is also one of the big criticisms. If you are microdosing and you continue to microdose, probably because you feel benefit, right? And if you started microdosing and didn't think you were getting benefit, then you stop, you drop out. So we also need to figure that out.
Yeah, what I like about what's happening there with that app is, you know, with the, you know, call it the bureaucratic type scientific process that is time and money and research and, you know, a lot of paperwork and documentation, versus the, you know, the social proof, the social validation. Because if people think that this is benefiting them, and especially from a natural substance, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest and, you know, in British Columbia, and you can pick your own mushrooms, let's say, you know, you've got something to work on, and you've got an area to focus. And that's what I thought was quite brilliant about this app. And, you know, sure, there might be a few little, you know, holes in it, but you're getting data and some information based on people who truly believe they are getting a result or not, you know. So I think that that's a really important aspect, because sometimes that the social proof and evidence helps support the science as that's starting to happen as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty common, right? Like we have to remember that almost every experiment comes from observation, right?
Hmm.
You observe something and maybe observe it again, and then you go, well, let's find out if what we're observing is true, right? And then we try to isolate it down and be very reductionist on it,
Hmm.
and that's fine. There's room for both of them. I think there's
Hmm.
room for us to all be scientists and observe. I mean, we're all scientists all day, right? If you eat a kale salad and feel fantastic, that's a study, right? You've just done
Hmm.
an N of one study on yourself, and you're like, that kale salad made me feel great. I'm gonna have more kale salad. Like,
Yeah, good
right, you're
one.
going to
Yeah.
do things, you're going to keep your study on kale salads going forward. If you eat kale salad and feel terrible and get diarrhea, I mean, you're going to drop out of your kale salad study. You're not going to do it
Yeah,
anymore,
that's
right?
right.
And that's okay. And I think we need to make this kind of observation
Hmm.
okay. And one of the books that was published, Microdosing, Ayelet Waldman's
I
book,
read it.
A Really Good Day.
Yep, read
Like,
it.
she was great. Like, she's a lawyer, she's got a bit of OCD, and she chronicled every single day of her microdosing experiment,
Hmm.
right? So people can do that too. You don't have
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. Yeah.
um
So what,
it-
speaking of moving all this forward, I have two questions, then they kind of overlap. So I'll start with this one because it leads perhaps to the other one. Is there any progress toward legalization of psilocybin for microdosing in Canada, at least?
well, I'm not in with where that's at. I know, I mean, I think we've had a really positive progress with Therasil. The fact that we've been able to have 6 people okayed under Section 56 for access for end of
Hmm.
life psilocybin is very promising.
Hmm.
I think that we've had significant studies using psilocybin at high doses, 2.5 grams equivalent of, psilocybe mushrooms at John Hopkins for end of life distress. So the safety studies have been done at high doses. The efficacy has been proven at high doses. So to me, that makes it fairly logical that doses that are subperceptual or subsensorium at 1/10 or 1/20th of those doses that are given in the studies and
Hmm.
showed safety and efficacy, it seems legitimate that at much lower doses, that would be a no-brainer.
Hmm.
Now, will that be legalized and allowed? Whether it'll follow something like cannabis, where it'll first be medicalized and then opened up. Um, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think the societal conversation. What do we want to do with that?
Hmm.
I personally would love to see it for therapeutic use, at least.
Yeah.
Obviously, we wouldn't be doing all this research if we didn't believe in it.
Hmm.
Um, And so I don't know the answer. I mean, I think it certainly speaks to the fact that people need to know why these were made illegal.
Hmm.
They weren't made illegal because of safety issues. They were, again, it was political stuff, political
Yeah.
control and racism.
Yeah, I've
So
read some of the horror
um
show literature on that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think that, you need to know history to move forward. So I think
Hmm.
our policymakers and our researchers, are optimistic that we'll be moving forward. And again, I think if people really fully understood the history, especially people that go psychedelics are bad, like it's all, there's all this terrible stuff. If they actually know the history of it and know the science of it, it's very, you have to have a lot of cognitive dissonance to not change your mind. Like when with giving all that evidence of like, oh,
Hmm.
you have to change your mind on it.
Yeah.
So
Thank God that is changing. You have books like Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, for example. So it is really changing, and that generation of people are passing away as well, and fresher minds are coming in. So the related question I wanted to ask you, though, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but I'll just throw it out there anyway. I've been hearing, on the grapevine, as it were, that some of the same kind of what I might judge to be overambitious, perhaps even I could judge it as greedy capitalism, is coming into the psilocybin world in the same way that it was with cannabis a few years ago, as people began to see that it was approaching, legalization. These large companies with a lot of money to throw around got involved for really, as far as I can tell, and this is not my own opinion, this is what I'm hearing from people that are somehow involved in all this. Profit has been their sole motive, really, in these cases. And now it's happening with psilocybin. Like, I know a fellow who's he's involved in this business, and he's getting petitions from people from Ontario that say, "I got $20 million to throw at this. Where should I put it?" So are you aware of that, and do you have concerns about that? And is there anything you could say about how to steward this forward, wisely, safely,
Yeah.
responsibly?
Well, where people seek and make money, they will want to make money, I guess. I think there can be a happy marriage of making money and doing good, and that kind of speaks to the B Corp model in the U.S., where you can have a corporation that makes money, but in their shareholders agreement, it's a certain amount of it needs to be beneficial to the commons, to society. And of course, there's going to be a gold rush in here, right? I mean, people have money, they want to invest it somewhere, they want a quick return on it. And the community and the researchers and the scientists and people like you guys, we can speak about this openly, and we can do old-fashioned shunning. We can ignore these companies. We can not give them any press, and we can shed light on companies that are doing good work. There are a few. I've actually followed this ecosystem quite closely. I laugh every time I see a new IPO offered, and then you can do your research. You can look at their board. You can look at their advisors. Almost none of them have any people that have done legitimate psychedelic research or have any psychedelic knowledge. That many of them are coming from cannabis, like you said. And they're basically advertising, hey, we made a lot of money in cannabis, so invest and we'll make you a lot of money in psychedelics. And if people want to invest that way, that's their choice. But there's also really good quality groups and companies and nonprofits that are doing the full package. They're committing to doing research, they're committing to training therapists, they're committing to doing therapy. They're aligned with good ethical groups. So I would say to investors out there, if any investors are watching, do your due diligence, because there are going to be a lot of pump and dump companies that are going to do IPOs and raise shareholders' money. But what do they have? Any new company coming into this space that's promising IP or patents, all that's been sewn up. That was sewn up in the 2016, 2015. So companies promising stuff like that, they're going to get the uninformed and the unsophisticated investors. And I feel sorry for those people, that are going to invest. So you really do need to do your due diligence. And there's good quality groups that people, if you truly want to move psychedelic medicine forward, MAPS Canada, you can donate to MAPS Canada. You can donate to your academic institutions that are doing psychedelic research. The BC Centre for Substance Use is doing substance research. There's good places to put money if you really want to do good. So, but it'll be a little bit of the Wild West, I think, for a while. And those of us that have been in this space for longer, it's up to us to shepherd that.
Excellent. Marc, this has been quite meaty and informative, and I don't really have anything else on my mind to ask you about, Pam. Do you, Marc?
I can always have a conversation about this work because I've always got, a lot of questions. But I guess my question right now is, what do you see as the future, and how can people, from investing, what's the best way moving forward to support this work, locally? Part of it is act locally, think globally. How can we support this movement in a way that is, honoring set and setting, respect for, Indigenous traditions, and, just respect for humankind healing and transforming?
Yeah. Well, I I think again, knowing the history, I think taking some time to read Indigenous history and understand that, you know, these plants and fungi have been on the planet much longer than we have. And our ancestors all over the world have used these very thoughtfully. And it's good to have that information to see how we all, I mean, we're all Indigenous, right? Somewhere, many of us have just traveled a lot further from maybe where we were 10,000 years ago. Anyways, knowing the Indigenous history, I think knowing the first wave, like that's the Indigenous history, knowing the second wave, the research in psychedelics that was happening in the 50s and 60s and 70s, take the time to learn that. Take some time to look into the studies and know where we're at, and take some time to do a little reading and studying on people who really know their stuff. Like Francois Blad is one of my favorites. You know, her book Consciousness Medicine is a phenomenal primer on set and setting, and I think, you know, having a good read through that is really important.
Excuse me,
Especially
Pam.
people that are thinking being. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, at least on my end, your sound broke up just as you were saying the name of that author, and I know her. I've interviewed her on Stephen Gray Vision YouTube channel. Françoise Bourza, Bourz or Z if you're American, A-T, and the book is called Consciousness Medicine. Yeah, I've read it. It's very educative, very informative. Yeah.
She's brilliant, and she really bridges both. She's, you know, indigenously trained and, you know, Western person, so she really bridges it wonderfully. I think also for the support, and a little bit of shout out here to the Canadian Psychedelic Association, on which I'm an interim board member, and that is one of our things that we really want to do well, is actually, and it's coming up, is have a place there where people can actually get involved in helping fund and donate. So we really want to help researchers get funding for their trials. We want to help organizations that are training therapists make sure they have money. And so keep an eye out for that. That's an upcoming part of we'll be promoting. Obviously, MAPS Canada is doing a lot of great work. MAPS USA is doing a lot of great work, and your institutes. My understanding is UBC has a psychedelic department being formed. Other universities in Canada have psychedelic departments being formed. So there's great places to donate, but mostly get informed. Take the time to learn. And it's really important that we all just really move forward with integrity and wellness, and really thinking about how we can do this. We can do this really well. And ultimately, I just want people to be happier and healthier, get outside, have fun, be with your friends and family. And if we can do that, then, you know, we got it.
Very
How
inspiring.
how much better life would be if we could all just enjoy those simple things that, you know, have become so elusive and evasive in our, you know, kind of crazy modern culture. So thank you for the work that you do, Pam. And I know we've crossed paths many times, and I just always appreciate the way you show up and what you have to share. And yeah, thank you for being part of our conference this year. And thank you for joining us this morning to have this conversation and share your work. I know the work you're doing with CPA as well, as we're a big supporter. And I know a number of the folks there, and we're always offering to support in any way we can with CPA maps, and, you know, making sure that we're sharing the, you know, the knowledge and the information too, like you say, be informed and have the right set and setting and do it in a good way so that we can create transformation in a, you know, much better way moving forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're in this together, right? We can make this world better. It's in our hands.
absolutely. Anything else you have, Stephen?
No, just thank you. You know, it's been for me very informative, very inspiring, and uplifting. You know, clearly. So thanks for taking the time with us, Pam, and really looking forward to you know, to hearing what you have to say at the conference as well. Are you going to be able to join us tomorrow for the Zoom orientation meeting?
Yep.
Excellent.
Great. Well, so for all of you curious about our conference, Spirit Plant Medicine Conference going virtual October 23rd to 25th because of the current state of the world. And we are going to be doing it a little bit more unique. We want to create an interactive experience for folks. And we're working out a few things still on a little bit of the technology side. It's a fun learning experience. And we look forward to having a number of great presenters and musicians, and people are going to pop in and say hi. And the goal is to make it an interactive experience. We look forward to having Dr. Pam with us. And it's really just around the corner. I can't believe how fast time is going. For more information, you can visit www.spiritplantmedicine.com. And our guest, Dr. Pam, has a coupon code to share with you, and it is Kryskow. Kryskow 2020. You can save 11% there. And any other information on the conference, you can catch up on all the great list of presenters at spiritplantmedicine.com. Thanks again, Dr. Pam. Thanks again, Stephen. This is Marc Caron signing off for Conscious Living Radio here on 100.5 FM FRO Co-op Radio in Vancouver. Take care.